I'm thinking of ending things, the new Netflix film written and directed by Charlie Kaufman, based on the novel by the same name by Ian Reid, which oddly enough is classified as a thriller horror novel, so I will definitely be checking that out. So keep an eye out for a review on that. This movie stars two Jessies, Jessie Buckley and Jesse Plemons, the latter uncannily looking a little bit like Matt Damon. My friend and I have another nickname for him, but I do not need that soundbite on the internet anywhere. And Mike, you son of a bitch, if you're watching, do not put it in the comments. See, look, I'm not the only one. Just Google it. All right, so what is this movie about? Well, we're introduced to a young woman, literally named Young Woman in the film, and she's joining her boyfriend named Jake, played by Jesse Plemons, and they're going on a trip in a snowstorm through rural Oklahoma to visit his parents for the first time. And the title of the movie becomes very apparent when we are inside the head of the young woman. And she says, I'm thinking of ending things. And she is referring to her relationship with Jake, which has only been going on for 6 weeks. So after a long drive through a perilous snowstorm where they're having deep conversations, they're philosophizing about various things, and we finally get to the parents' house, things start to get a little weird. I'm talking multiverse weird. Now, I try to keep my reviews as spoiler-free as possible. This one is going to be no different than anything else. But I think just because of the nature of this film, I'm going to have a spoilery talk at the very, very end. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested, if you've seen the movie and you want to get some of my additional thoughts there. So what did I think? Well, the first thing you'll notice is this film is shot in 4:3. So I've heard this excuse used for many films shot in the same format where you're trying to be more intimate, you're trying to be more close to the characters, maybe even try to create a claustrophobic atmosphere. So whether or not you believe that is BS or not, that's up to you. It didn't bother me personally. All right, let's talk about the performances now. So everyone did a fantastic job, but I feel like the two standout actors in this are Toni Collette and David Thewlis. I've loved them in everything I've seen them in, but I have yet to see them exhibit such range here. And while they are playing with extremes, so I think that that might be a little bit easier to convey on film versus something like a very nuanced performance that we get out of Jesse Plemons, it still had me laughing and wondering what they were going to do next. So as I mentioned, Jesse Plemons, he plays a very understated character. His performance is very nuanced. And I don't think I really appreciated it until I finished the whole film. And you can see the moments where he starts to break out of those realms and the micro detail he showed here. And last but not least, Jessie Buckley, who plays our POV character, young woman. We get in her head a lot in this film. And I mean literally, you hear VO of her thoughts. And so we do get very close to her because of that, but also there's moments where she's not reacting to these very bizarre situations. And in those moments, you're kind of almost stripped away from her, but we always go back. And this will lead a little bit into the spoilery talk later on. So if you're interested in that, please hang around till the very end of the video. So now the structure and the narrative. I think this is a very standout part of the film. It has two distinct parts and it's divided by a midpoint. The first part I found very interesting and engrossing despite all of the jargon and the heavy dialogue used here. The script must have been very dense, I'll just leave it at that. But it keeps your attention through the car ride where they're just talking, and then it just escalates completely when they make it to his parents' house. And I don't want to spoil anything, but that was by far my favorite part of the movie. But in the first half, and actually throughout the entire film, we're introduced to this other character that seems completely unrelated to any of the main players in this film. It does make sense once you see the whole thing and how this character integrates into the narrative. But while you're watching it, it may feel like it comes out of nowhere, but also it plants the seed that you know this is going to pay off at some point. So as I said, the first half I completely loved, and the second half to a degree is a mirror of the first half in that we have the characters, young woman, and Jake driving back home. And so we're in that situation where they're just having these very deep conversations about a vast array of topics, which are all very layered and applicable to every character. And there's so much subtext there. I feel like you could watch this movie multiple times and get so much more out of it. But the second half of the film, while I didn't feel like the mystery was completely over, the repetitive scenes of the car drive back and the conversations they had started to wear on me a little bit. I have to admit I wasn't super engaged at that point. And then it picked my attention back up when things started to go to the weird again. But beyond that, when we get to the third act, it lost me a little bit. Not to say anything is wrong there. This is just my opinion about the content that just doesn't interest me as much. And I'll just say it musical. There's a musical element to this film. I can't stand musicals. I'm sorry if you like them. But if you do like musicals, maybe you'll even like the second half of this movie more than I did. It also needs to be said that nothing about this film is literal. Nothing about this film is on the surface. It is a mixture of what is happening is actually happening, but so much of it is symbolic. Who these characters are, what they're doing, what they're about, and how they relate to this entire story. I feel like the ending is what you would expect in a film like this, but it forces you to stretch yourself a little bit, dig a little bit deeper, think about some things, which in film I completely love doing. Now, should you watch it? Well, if you're looking for a very standard narrative, what you see is what you get. Everything's on the surface. And I'm not talking about lack of subtext. I'm talking about an abstraction of the narrative, symbolism everywhere, as I mentioned. So if you want to sit back and just enjoy a movie for what it is, you may get bored in this, you may even dislike it. This is not really a passive experience. I feel like it's best to be engaged with this. Keep your eyes, your ears, and your mind open, because unless you do that, you're just really gonna miss out on a lot. But if you have seen Charlie Kaufman's films, ones like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Anomalisa, Adaptation even, you know what to expect here. And I think you will highly enjoy it. I don't think this is my favorite film of his. I feel like Anomalisa, for me, is his standout work, but I still really enjoyed this film. So with that said, I'm going to have to give I'm Thinking of Ending Things a 7.5 out of 10. The performances hooked me. The first half hooked me. I was in the car with these characters. I was in the zany moments at the parents' house. But after the midpoint, the tone changed slightly, and I have to admit I found it somewhat boring. That said, I appreciate what was happening here, the art that went into this, the thought that went into this, and how that Charlie Kaufman and his entire production crew went out to tell a truly unique story and convey it in a very visually unique way. If you've seen it, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take on it. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Did you know what to expect going into it? Or did you blindly click play on the Netflix app? Also, if you'd like to see me create and not just critique, and if you're into storytelling or writing or anything like that, you might enjoy my series Worth 1,000 Words, where I write a 1,000 word short story on the spot based on a piece of artwork. And if you did see it and wanted to talk a little bit more about spoilery stuff, hang around, it's coming right up. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. So if you're here by mistake and you haven't seen the movie and you don't want anything spoiled, leave now. Go ahead, I'll give you a second. So this film, it didn't really hit me until the end when I saw the credits roll and I saw that Jessie Buckley played young woman. All of it came together for me. While I was forming theories and ideas about what it all meant while I was watching it, just seeing that name, it was like an epiphany. It was weird. I didn't read any deep dives into this film. This is just me and what my initial thoughts were after seeing it. So the most interesting thing to me was that the realization that this young woman was the embodiment of all of these relationships he had, all of these possibilities even. Maybe he didn't have them, but they were the ones he could have had. And me personally, you know, in the past when you've been in a relationship that has maybe lasted a long time or even been short, and then you end that relationship, you're always thinking about like, well, what happened to that person? Where are they now? Are they okay? What is their life like? And this movie really reminded me of that because you saw all of these glimpses, like when they were at his parents' house and they're showing these different times in their life when they're younger, when they're older, conversations about her where she's a physicist, an artist, a writer, all of these things, and it didn't quite make sense to me at that time. And for whatever that, seeing that her name was Young Woman really set it off. And another thing is, you have to understand that even though we were in her head most of the time and she felt like the POV character, really the main character of the story is Jake, is Jesse Plemons' character. He was the one who had the monologue at the end of the film, which, you know, you had the entire audience out there all wearing old makeup to signify this is the end for him. These are all the people who have been in his life, presumably, and they're all watching him tell his final story until he dies, which is shown at the very end of the film as the credits roll, when we see the car that they drove in to the school just completely covered with snow. Now, do I think I'm gonna watch it again? I don't know. I feel like I'd gotten all I can from it. And while I know if I were to watch that and see all the small details, I'm sure I'd even pull more from it. But as I mentioned in the review, I don't know that it really held my attention enough to revisit it again. Maybe down the road. I don't know. We'll see. And one moment I really loved is when she finally goes down to the basement with it through the door that has all the scratches on it, the animalistic scratches and the tape, and finds the artwork with his name on it. I thought that was a really cool touch. And all of the animation when they brought it back, when he had the conversation about the pig with the maggots in its belly, and then we see that later on when he is the janitor essentially, and he follows the pig to his death. I thought that was a great callback. And this movie was incredibly creative, and while it felt a little bit long, I think everything served its purpose and was well done. If you do want to comment down below on spoilers that you think I completely got wrong or other theories that you may have, please make sure to give a little bit of space in the comments so they have to hit the see more button so you're not spoiling it for anyone else. All right, I'm done. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.